Well, folks, Marvel Phase 4 from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Walt Disney Company, Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, everybody in the mix. It's been a long, slogging road, beginning with Black Widow, moving on to Shang-Chi, moving on to the Eternals, moving on to a Sony-distributed release, a very successful Spider-Man No Way Home film, and then segueing into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, followed by Thor: Love and Thunder. And now we come to the climax, or at least what Disney was hoping was the climax to this film in terms of box office revenues. And that, of course, is Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. Now, as we've been covering this film since its initial release date a little over a month ago at this point, we had projected very early on, in fact, within 24 hours after the film had opened, that we felt, based on the data, based on what we were seeing, that this movie would conclude its box office run somewhere in between Doctor Strange and Thor from this year. And we said, as an exact figure, that this movie would probably finish up somewhere right around the $800 million mark. And folks, it looks like it's going to finish up almost exactly spot on to that, plus or minus maybe 3%. At this point, Wakanda Forever, based on initial information, suggested that at $800 million or in that range is where it would either hit its break-even point or work its way into a comfortably assumed profit margin, although not very much. But then a few days ago, we had some information leaked to us from a source via WDW Pro of thatparkplace.com. And Pro made a tremendous video on Twitter going over this, and I joined him for that video. And today, he's here to talk about that once again. Let me bring him on right now. WDW Pro, welcome aboard. We've got a lot to discuss. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's great to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks that have not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and do hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment below this video before you head out the door. Today, YouTube loves the comments. We have smashed through the 16,000 subscriber mark just in the last few days and moving towards 17,000 as we approach Christmas and New Year's. Thank you all so much. I hope you've all had a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays to everybody as we approach this wonderful New Year. But we have a lot to discuss, more than we could discuss on our usual Sunday live show right here on Valiant Renegade called Renegade Online. Tomorrow's show is going to revolve around Avatar 2 and its box office, along with a recently released Wall Street Journal article around the subject matter of the Disney coup that happened recently between Bob Iger and Bob Chapek and Christine McCarthy. Stay tuned for that tomorrow. You do not want to miss that live show. We have an amazing amount of data to cover and break down. But for this today, we wanted to take this time to cover a more recent issue with Wakanda Forever, something you and I discussed recently in your video on Twitter, your Twitter handle, Pro, at WDW Pro, the number 1, WDW Pro 1, over on Twitter. Make sure you folks are following there. Pro has been releasing videos, and you've got a new YouTube channel starting soon. So welcome aboard. Let's talk about this Wakanda thing, because this just did not go the way Disney had hoped, did it?
Let's talk about that. No, it did not go the way that they had anticipated, or perhaps it has gone the way that they anticipated, if you are to assume that some of the leaks we're getting now in the Wall Street Journal are perhaps shame moving throughout the company, where they're shifting that blame to other parties.
Yep.
Maybe they did realize they were in more trouble, because what we're finding out is that because of 2 failed animated films, what Disney decided to do behind the scenes was move much of the marketing spend that they had for both Lightyear, especially in Q4, as well as for Strange World in total, and move that spend on promo over into Wakanda Forever. Now, the problem with doing so is not only does it admit defeat on those two animated films, but also it greatly increased the total expenditure for Black Panther 2. And as a result, even though that movie is going to top the 800 million mark off of its box office, that's not enough any longer to get it past the profitability point. Now, the way that we know that is because we had information leaked to us through a source which is 1,000% rock solid, letting us know that this movie now is approaching a 1-to-1 ratio spend on production and promotion. And so because we know essentially the amount of money that was spent on producing the film, we can then ascertain what the amount is, if it's a 1-to-1, that's being spent on the promo after those funds from the other two films were rolled into this one.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And there's precedent for that. We know from our respected colleagues out there at like Puck Magazine and Matthew Baloney, who earlier this year was able to ascertain information from Paramount Studios regarding Top Gun Maverick. That film had a roughly 1-to-1 ratio expenditure between production and marketing. In fact, I think the marketing spend exceeded the production spend after all said and done, because the movie was so popular, was such a hit, and had such a huge set of legs on it after opening weekend that Paramount almost positively to 100% would have dumped tens of millions more into the marketing budget to continue to drive it. And that was an investment that worked. That had an ROI that was exceedingly positive. We saw something similar last year from Sony Pictures with Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home had a reported production budget of about $200 million. But according to reports from some of the major Hollywood trades, and I think Variety magazine may have been the impetus for this that released this information, suggesting that Sony itself had spent $240 million plus on marketing that film, basically a 1.25-to-1 ratio, marketing versus production. So there's a tremendous precedence for this, and of course, as an example I've used a great many times, and this is more for our new viewers that have not heard me say this before, maybe have not watched a video here on Valiant Renegade. Things like horror movies like The Nun, $20 million production budget, $80 million worldwide expenditures on marketing that film. Two great results, almost $400 million at the box office, which is a tremendous return for a horror film. So going 1-to-1 is certainly not unprecedented. It's nowhere near out of the realm of normal possibilities, particularly when you're talking about a major blockbuster film. Avatar could very well be one of those, or very close to a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm willing to bet we'll find that out. We'll talk more about that tomorrow on the live show. But with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, let's look at the numbers as to where we stand now with this, because this changes the gamut. We're at, through Friday of this week, through, that would be December 16th. We're recording this on Saturday the 17th. Domestic total box office just breached 415. International box office stands at 357.42, let's call it. Now, that international figure does probably not include the last couple of days. International box office results always lag behind, usually in terms of 24 to 48 to 72 hours, depending on if we're a weekday versus a weekend. But this is where we are. This movie is probably going to close up around 800 million or slightly north of that. This is a weekend estimate that we have right now of about $5 to $6 million for Black Panther. Of course, it is now in full competition with Avatar 2, The Way of Water. Avatar is going to rob it of any remaining PLF, premium large format screens, for certain. So Wakanda Forever will be relegated to smaller theaters, ergo lower average ticket prices. So that is something that needs to be considered. But that's where we are. And at 800 million, like we said, we thought, hey, this could break even, but now it doesn't look like it. Now it looks like, based on the information you got, Pro, that this movie, if indeed had a total $500 million expenditure, that is base production meets base internal marketing, that doesn't include external third-party marketing partners that they may have had, like with Lexus, as they did, and several others. This is just an internal, let's promote the film itself in theaters. $500 million. That means that this movie is probably on schedule to lose somewhere in the aggregate of around $100 million for the Walt Disney Company. Your thoughts?
And it's a string of issues such as this for the Walt Disney Company. And again, that's why when we see things come out of the Wall Street Journal now, it does look like they're trying to do a lot of blame shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the interesting things is that you might say, well, maybe this isn't the fault of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. After all, the movie has had its marketing ramped up because they pulled funds off of Lightyear and off of Strange World and dumped it into this movie. And well,
Yes.
fair enough, right? That's a fair enough argument. But the real problem for Wakanda Forever, and this is an issue that is rising with Marvel films in general, is that the original movie pulled in $1.34 billion at the worldwide box office. Now, that was off of ticket prices, which were greatly decreased at the time in comparison to what ticket prices are today.
Yes.
The price of a movie ticket is even more inflated than the already high rate of inflation going on across the globe. When you figure that out, and when you figure out that this sequel did not come close to that 1.34 billion, the conclusion you arrive at is that when you look at the audience numbers, the actual numbers of people who went into the theater to see it, this is far diminished from the original movie. And what that means is if you have, let's say, 40 to 55% of the original audience coming to watch the movie, then you have less societal impact, you're less prominent in pop culture, and you're also driving far less in terms of merchandising sales. So all of this is a compounding negative for Disney that they need to reverse with their Marvel movies. Our next chance to see if this is a continuing trend for all of Marvel is going to be the next Ant-Man movie. And then after that, we get Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which will be the exit door for James Gunn as he heads over to the DCU.
Yeah.
This is all going to be very interesting for trying to figure out how damaged Disney is, not just in terms of Disney animation, which is obliterated. Let's just say it. It's obliterated.
They've lost the
But
crown.
in terms of, that's right. They've lost the crown. Well, I mean, it's more than just losing the crown. Look at Strange World. I mean, this is a movie. This is an animated movie that came out over Thanksgiving, and it did terrible. I mean, it is just abysmal what they pulled in the box office. You could put almost any movie out there and slap the name Disney on it and do better than what that movie did.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to determine now, so you've got Star Wars that is theatrically dead. You have Disney Animation, which has now lost the crown, and perhaps worse. We're trying to figure out now, is Marvel a damaged brand? And not only that, so, and again, this goes back to the Wall Street Journal and the blame shifting that we're seeing. Not only that, okay, here's Avatar, and we're going to talk about this on the live show. Here's Avatar. If that underperforms, and that's a huge part of Walt Disney World, right? They've got the Pandora section of the park and Animal Kingdom that's, they could expand that massively if it's a huge franchise. They could merchandise this franchise like you wouldn't believe with Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
If this comes in underperforming at the cost that it has, with the expectation of all the other movies, you could start seeing a cascading effect throughout the Disney company where it is time for a major course correction.
Yeah, and I think, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow, and I think that course correction was, again, part of the impetus for Bob Chapek's release from duty, as it were. We know the next phase of Chapek's changes were coming in the forms of hiring freezes, which, of course, Robert Iger, since reclaiming the throne, has confirmed and will sustain, or will continue, excuse me. But no word yet on the layoff side, and it was that layoff side that I think was the final nail in the coffin for Chapek, because I think the layoffs would have begun in very similar fashion to what we saw at Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers Discovery under Zaslav. We saw some of the stuff at Netflix, where a lot of these departments where a tremendous amount of capital expenditures, or CapEx, was being sent into to produce, as the colloquial term would be, woke content, right? I think that was going to happen at Disney, and that was becoming a bridge too far. We'll get more into that tomorrow, Sunday afternoon on the live show at 5 o'clock U.S. Central Standard Time. But as it stands now, looking at this, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, with the information you received, there's no way around it, because the figures that we use here at Valiant Renegade to determine what the theatrical rentals are back to studios are the same figures that the experts, the quote-unquote experts, use at Deadline Magazine to do the same calculations. We saw one recently with Black Adam. And that is to say that the rental agreements that are put out by places like AMC Theaters, the largest theatrical exhibitioner in the U.S. and Canada with massive international reach, when you look at the domestic box office and you see about 53% return to Walt Disney Studios from that, you could be generous and go as high as maybe 55. And then you've got the international box office, which is far more standardized because of international laws and regulations and tax environments, that is going to come back somewhere, especially with current FX drag or foreign currency exchange drag, as we've talked about before, with the dollar being so strong against foreign currencies. 41, maybe 42% of that international box office makes it back to Disney after the theaters take their cut. So you're looking at somewhere around maybe at the end of the day, $400 million or so will make it back to the Walt Disney Company. But if they spent $500 million marketing and producing this film, that's a $100 million loss in the books, no matter how you cut it. And it's a number, frankly, that's very easily believable, especially as you correctly pointed out, Pro, after we had posited and then basically got confirmation from your very, very, very reliable source in this case that there was a shift at the distribution level in Disney from remapping marketing dollars away from Strange World and perhaps even Lightyear, and then reallocating them towards Wakanda Forever, because Disney felt like this could be their best chance at a win, and it just didn't work out that way. They lost over half their audience, or half their ticket sales, let's say it that way, with inflation adjustments, obviously. They lost over half their ticket sales from the first film. And even if you net out China and Russia, which were available markets for the first film in 2018, that only accounted for about $130 million or so of the $1.3 billion total haul in 2018 for that first film that actually had Black Panther in it. That was the big difference here. So, Pro, final thoughts?
You were talking about the source and how we derive these numbers and whether or not we're accurate, that sort of thing. And I don't often toot the horn of your channel and of my accuracy and all that sort of thing. It doesn't do you well to brag. But for those viewers who are new to the channel, let me just say, on occasion we do leak information, or we do get exclusives that we discuss. And this is just a question to you. I haven't asked this to you before the show. This is unplanned, but have we shared a single leak? Have we shared a single exclusive on this show in the past 8-9 months that has been untrue?
No.
I mean, so people go back and check the track record. I mean, this is the same show. This is the same channel where we revealed that Marvel was trying to sign Hugh Jackman. And we pulled that out like 2 weeks before
you
anybody.
Had it. Spot on.
Before anybody. Yeah, but it's on your channel.
Mm-hmm.
This is, so what we're trying to say is we're not making this stuff up, okay?
No.
This will come out eventually. You'll find out that it was 250. It may take a year. It may whatever it takes, but we're not making this stuff up. We're not trying to disparage Wakanda Forever. We're not trying to throw anybody under the bus. We're not trying to hate on Disney. Mm-hmm. We're trying to give you the real numbers. We're trying to break this down in a professional manner. And then in doing so, unlike some of these other legacy media groups out there that you might follow, we're trying to help you understand where the culture is going and what people are interested in and why things happen the way they do in the very best and most accurate way that we can.
Indeed. And for that, stay tuned tomorrow, Sunday, 5 o'clock U.S. Central Standard Time for Renegade Online right here on Valiant Renegade. Hope to see you there on the live stream. And until then, take care.